might work. I think after we do our intros, maybe Paul and Will, you can also go in a little bit into what the projects are that you all normally work on, and what kind of code bases those use, where they live in the stack, la-di-da. But yeah, we can just start with a quick round of intros first.
Sure. Well, I'm Paul. I've been working on the FarmOS project primarily, which is from Open Team. FarmOS is record keeping software for on-farm data. Yeah, with that for now.
Will, do you want to go next?
Oh, hey, sorry, I just got audio connected. Hi, I'm Will. I'm working with Oursci and the Quick Carbon project. I'm a developer. We're just doing intros, I assume. Are we talking about connection to Cosmwasm, or?
Yeah, intros and interest. Intro's good place to start.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in building sense-making capabilities and building tools that empower farmers. Yeah. Great to be on the call with everyone. Excited about Cosmwasm.
So I'm Anil. So I'm helping Regen team, in organizing this testnet, and then executing this smart contract functionalities and testing out the capabilities of Cosmwasm. I think this is gonna be a good starting point for ecosystem service credit contract functionality.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Sahith, do you want to say a quick word? Still on mute, it seems.
Yeah, Sahith is unmuted. Yes.
Okay, well, we can continue through. So Paul and Will, you two are both in, like, already actively running the testnet or engaging it. Can we kind of just get a shared understanding of what that experience has been like for you? Has it been fine, easy? Are you kind of comfortable in the operational goodness of what it means to be like spinning up a node? And if so, like also running transactions against it, how has that been like? Yeah, just so we can kind of understand that collectively.
Yeah. Well, this is our second testnet, so we were in the testnet prior to this as well. And yeah, so we've both been chatting back and forth and kind of helping each other. I think we've both run into issues and we've both gotten jailed and we've both had to figure out how to get out of that. So I think that's kind of a good way of learning all sorts of different things. Yeah, I guess we haven't done a whole lot of at least I haven't done a whole lot of running transactions and stuff outside of the challenges, but that's been fairly intuitive so far. So I'm not sure what else Will wants to add.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good experience for me. Similar thoughts. I haven't really explored as much as I would like to, just because I haven't had the time. It'd be great to get more familiar with just like Cosmos in general and like what's been inherited and what you guys are adding on top. Yeah, and yeah, like Paul was saying, I've definitely like run into some snags and had to fix some things, but I think it's a good thing. And like, why you guys are running these test nets is to, educate people and, give them the experience of like breaking things and having to fix them. So that's been good. One thing that's been a hassle is like dealing with storage, I guess, or like I just like upgrading storage has been a bit of a hassle and like not really knowing what to expect and like trying to keep the expenses of the node relatively low. So I guess that's one thing.
How are you guys running your nodes? Like on what? Like on managed service or cluster or something?
Yeah, I've got mine on DigitalOcean and I think Paul's got his on Linode.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, nice to see some diversity there. To see you both working on different stuff. I mean, it's a good test to make sure that we're not all trying things on the same infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And I feel I have kind of a background in IT as well, so I feel comfortable setting up networks and would feel comfortable running one from home, but I don't think I could get in reliable enough internet connection and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure, looking forward if I could actually be a validator on the main test net, but definitely is fun doing it now and learning everything.
Just due to time constraints?
Well, I guess my understanding was maybe using a VPS isn't best on the main test net, at least in the
On the
long
main
run.
net? Yeah, I mean,
On the main net, yeah.
best practice is definitely to have a data center, like to do key management off. You don't want to do your key management on the cloud on a main net for best practices.
Yeah.
That isn't to say that some people aren't doing that, but
Yeah. So even when they are using cloud, they need to have, KMS service or something to secure their credentials. They cannot just use the node and then store plain private keys on the nodes.
Okay.
So
And
would
then
it
there
make?
would be different.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So are you maintaining any architecture for the current validator setup? Like, is that single validator node, or else do you have any Sentry kind of systems?
Well, I just have one node. I don't have much of an architecture. It seems like others have like nodes
Yeah.
around the world and they all share the same. Yeah.
Okay. If you are planning mainnet, obviously that setup would be needed, because you need to maintain the uptime, and then,
Yeah.
So would that be you have multiple instances running so that they're redundant? Is that what you're saying, or?
Yes. So
Sorry.
we have
Yeah.
running.
Cool. Anil, can you turn up your microphone a little bit? I don't know if that's possible. Thank you. Would it make sense for, so Paul and Will, have either of you been able to see the payout contract, like the README document that Anil shared? Would it be useful for us to walk through that at a high level?
Sure.
Or
You mean like the phase 5 like instructions kind of?
yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Anil, could you? I don't think we need to go through the whole thing like in detail, but maybe if you can give kind of like an overview of it, just so that we're all like on the same page of that, and then we can start talking about how that feels and sits, and then maybe into some use case ideas specifically.
Yes, I think this is a basic payout contract that we designed. So where a contract maintains the current state of any forest or else any land zone kind of things. It will maintain the current state, and then there will be an oracle which sends the updates regularly. Let's say for every day, or else for every 3 months, for every quarter, it sends out the update on the state forest cover. So if it is increased by some percentage, we are paying them some tokens. If it is the same as previous, we are paying them little lesser. If it is decreased, obviously we don't pay anything. That is that's how like this payout contract functions for now. This would be a very basic payout contract we designed, but obviously we can design any complex contracts like this on Cosmwasm. Corey, you want me to add anything else?
No, just a clarifying question. So is the idea that the tokens used here, these total tokens, is this specific to the contract, or are these meant to be the native ledger tokens?
For now, it is contract-based tokens. Once this IBC is there, like they can lock any tokens.
So that would mean that the contract itself, in addition to having some sort of like holding capabilities and like connections to an oracle, it would also have, as part of its like business logic, essentially an ERC20 implementation or like some fungible token implementation within the
Yes.
contract. Okay.
Yeah, and then it can hold native tokens like region tokens or else atoms as well.
Sorry,
And-
say that again.
So it can hold native tokens like atoms or any other tokens as well. Once that IBC is in place.
Right.
So the idea here is one of the, for instance, you could have a stable token or like e-money's fiat-backed tokens that could be sent via IBC and could fund the smart contract and then could be automatically issued to, whether it's for an ecological outcome or provision of data on a weekly basis or whatever it is, you could just sort of like automate if this is fulfilled, like if this satellite, if Optus says that this happened, then that happens. If Oursci received the FarmOS management data, then this happens, and there could be payouts. Or it could be a token that isn't meant to be monetary, that, people exchange for reputation credits, or I don't know. I mean, you could sort of choose your own adventure, I think. There's a lot of different use cases. So I see that there's, and just like taking a step back to our original intention around ecological state protocols and smart contracts, I think likely thinking of smart contracts that sort of relate to one another, where you have sort of data provision smart contracts where, there's agreements for provision of data, and there's verifiers, and they sort of like stack together like Legos, and they add up to, the issuance of a payment for an ecological outcome or something, is one way that I've been thinking of it. So you can kind of break them into discrete parts, and they can build up towards something that actually generates a credit or, some sort of other agreement. But I don't know if that's useful context, but that's kind of was some of the original thinking when Aaron was architecting Cosmwasm for how this stuff sort of like adds together to create the outcome that we were hoping.
What were those pieces again that you were talking about as like going to contribute to creating a credit? You were saying like data from different.
You could think of simple, there's a smart contract between FarmOS and Oursci and Applied Geosolutions that, is for a data provision, and then at some point it like triggers a verification event that data is audited by either a third party, or maybe it's an automated audit, and then that sort of like can trigger like the issuance of a credit, essentially, like accumulates over time, and then it goes blink, and then a credit is generated and assigned to the appropriate parties through the smart contract.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So the contracts could, well, maybe this is another step, but contracts could talk to each other, maybe, or like communicate. Yeah. But I think that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about today.
Well,
Probably.
in this case, what I'm inviting is to not get overly complex, because contracts can talk to each other. So it's like you can build them together. So it's like, what's the most discrete and simple and useful proximate relationship in Open Team, where you're like, oh, it would be nice if we had a little contract that if this FarmOS instance was to sign to the aggregator, then this happens. And then if, Oursci because I know that there's some stuff happening, and is there a role for, that's where my mind has been, is there like a proximate near-term interesting role for a smart contract in some of the existing data exchange relationships? That, because noting that they can build up and we could think about credit issuance later, I would just sort of say, is there something that's like immediately interesting that we can sink our teeth into, that, we could even be writing a contract and then be testing it over the summer, you know,
Right.
yeah, that's kind of where my mind is at.
So maybe let's take a pause for a minute, and it would be great to just share with Anil and Sahith a bit about what the FarmOS and Oursci projects are at a very high level, and then a bit more in detail. Would it be useful to go into the recent integration that you two have been working on, your two projects, just so that we have a shared understanding kind of what that technical landscape is?
Yeah, I think that
Sure. Yeah.
that makes sense. Do you want to go first, Will?
Sure. So Oursci is a platform for data collection. So we have tools for field data collection, and we have tools for building out like complex forms to collect that data. And we're used by a bunch of different researchers and farmers. And part of the integration that we've been working on is being able to push to and pull from FarmOS, which is a farm management software. And I'll let Paul get into the details there. But yeah, and then I'm also working on the Quick Carbon project, which will probably have a different name soon. And that regards creating measurement techniques for soil carbon stocks, and then being able to reward those stocks with credits and pay out farmers ideally. Yeah, and so like the infrastructure for Quick Carbon will be based on using the existing Oursci data collection software with some extra functionality on top. Yeah, is there anything else? I mean, I'm thinking like that could be cool. Like we're doing some pilots with farmers using our software coming up soon, so that could be a great application. Like just using
a Quick Carbon credit issuance would be awesome. That'd be super fun.
Yes. Yeah. And it could even if there's no like money tied to it yet or whatever, it could just be like that we're testing out, like passing the data around that we're collecting anyways, right? And making sure all that flows well, and then be working towards actual, payouts and stuff.
Cool. So for FarmOS, like I said, it's a farm data and record keeping platform. It's also self-hosted. So what that means is there isn't one central database that has everyone's data in it, and that creates some unique challenges for us when we start thinking about sharing all the data that farmers have. And so for instance, with Oursci, they're signing up 100 to 200 farms for some of the projects they're doing with other third parties. And so to push and pull that data from the FarmOS instances, they need a way to aggregate that basically, rather than having to connect to 200 different servers. They need a way to connect to one. And so what we've done is create the FarmOS aggregator, which we've built out OAuth 2 integration into FarmOS. So now farms can be added to an aggregator, which Oursci has access to. And so they can use the aggregator as this layer in between multiple servers. And the FarmOS aggregator basically mirrors the FarmOS API. So you can do what you would to one FarmOS server, but you could also like request all information from all the farms on an aggregator. And so that's this other piece where there's obviously a lot of data interchange there. That in a similar way could be put into a contract.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, is there, like with the current architecture, you basically just opt in or you opt out, and how much permission control, like can you share certain types of data, or are you all in or all out? And is there any kind of exchange, like can you opt in exchange for a payment, or is it just like you're in or you're out kind of? What's the level of granularity there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for Oursci, it's a much more like managed approach to it. So Oursci has this agreement with the farms that they can add them to the aggregator. And essentially Oursci has full access to those FarmOS servers, but we're designing the FarmOS aggregator to work in a more or less managed way as well. So you could have for instance, we want to create a FarmOS community aggregator that any FarmOS user in the world could join. They could click the button that says like register my FarmOS server, and via OAuth scopes they can register with a subset of their with a subset of access to their data. So maybe it's only the location of their server, maybe it's all of their harvest data or all of their soil input data. That will be possible, but right now with Oursci, it's more of this managed approach, so they have full access to the farm's data. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there's no agreement of payments or anything like that.
Yeah, question just about this integration. So if a farm is using the Oursci app and ticks the box for the FarmOS aggregator, can that farm log into a FarmOS instance?
No, and that's
so
kind of
that
back to this.
farm and that farm will never use the FarmOS app or have any like the
Well,
data maybe or yeah, this is what I'm trying.
So
Like,
yeah, go ahead, Will.
yeah, so it's a bit tricky just because we don't want users to have to manage a bunch of different accounts, but like the data is all being populated into their FarmOS instance, and there's nothing like. And I think we often give
into the singular Oursci FarmOS aggregated instance.
No. There's instances for
each farm?
I mean, yes, they're all sharing an aggregator instance, but they are all individual instances of FarmOS. So like each individual farmer is having their data populated into an individual FarmOS instance for them. And so after all this data is, yeah. So I don't know exactly how many of them there are, but yeah, there are a lot.
But sorry, I don't mean to get into the technical weeds, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So does that mean that Oursci is managing like tens to hundreds of individual Drupal instances, each for every farm that they work with that signs up for FarmOS aggregator, or am I misunderstanding something there?
Yes, that's my understanding of it. I mean, I don't manage that part. Like I don't deal with the FarmOS integration, but I think that, I guess maybe how I would say it, like FarmOS isn't really managing the instances, or sorry, Oursci isn't managing the FarmOS instances. FarmOS, the like company,
Farmier.
Mike runs Farmier, right? Yeah, so Farmier is managing those instances, and Oursci has access to an aggregator, which I think is also managed by Farmier or FarmOS, and then we interact with those instances. So we're not managing the infrastructure, I guess, is the point that I'm getting at.
Got it.
If that's what you were wondering. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And the vision of this longer term is like trying to provide ways that people can share data and create new insights from like aggregated data, but do that in a way where they still maintain control of their data and they choose how much they share. Like that's what we're working towards. And I think, I would love to see like being able to reward people for sharing more data and that sort of thing. But yeah, right now that's just kind of like a vision. And I don't know that, it'd be great to have like Greg has probably more thoughts on all that and like where we're at and how we'll get there. But that's kind of the goal.
It might be useful if like we put the current testnet kind of like challenge aside for a second and just like kind of hold it there and say,
sure,
if there were to be some kind of FarmOS, Oursci, if a part of that integration were to get kind of serialized and like and sort of signed as like an on-chain kind of attestation of like this happened or some data was shipped or da-da-da-da. Is there an understanding between you two of what that might look like or what would be interesting or valuable from either a user or developer perspective?
I would say no, not yet. I mean, like, I think it would take some work to figure out exactly like, I mean, I think it could be useful and like we could decide on like formats, but right now there's like, I guess it's either by like planting or by field, but there's a lot of variation. So like, I guess, I don't know, like, I can't say like specifically that I know a thing that would be super valuable, but I think that like in general, we're interested in that. I don't know, Paul, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. I'm thinking of some examples like it, you know, FarmOS might be a good way to send that trigger to the blockchain of like this observation happened on whatever that's, you know, if it's every hour or every month or whatever, that might kind of make sense. And that data flow could start in the Oursci app and go to FarmOS, which then goes up to the blockchain.
Here's a question that I have. Does FarmOS have some way of, does it use the same sort of language to describe, because we're, at least in the realm of like data stuff and data attestations, often you're talking about one data point, right? Or one, like, let's say piece of land or project, right? And there are multiple independent entities that like sign to say something about that same thing, right? So you can have like, let's say the land steward say, yes, I'm doing this thing. And then an auditor say like, he or they really did that thing. Within the FarmOS and Oursci landscape, are either of you or both of you even using the same kind of, not taxonomy, but like URN system, or like, is there, so between many FarmOS instances, let's just take that as an example, you know, is there a standardized way of addressing location? I would imagine maybe you have one way of addressing location, or would there ever be two different FarmOS instances that are both pointing to the same project? And maybe we can talk about that, because what I'm trying to understand is like, if we're to have within this use case multiple entities making the same attestation about a single, be it project or set of land, like where is that living on the tech side? I'm trying to kind of get to an understanding of that.
Right. I think there's work to be done there. Paul, I don't know, you might have more experience with some of this stuff because Paul is working more directly on the integration between the two applications, or the two platforms. But I know that like we will frequently, you know, pull from a FarmOS instance and then push the data to it. So we are referring to the same thing. I don't think we have like a shared way of addressing like a particular farm in a really robust way. But Paul, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, and I've basically seen the FarmOS side of this integration and have created the API that Oursci is using. And some of these things are kind of like problems that we know that are ahead. It's like if you have multiple farms and you want to track, you know, you want to create a record on all of those FarmOS server instances. They each get an ID, but that ID isn't the same for everyone because one server might have 1,000 logs already. So that kind of problem is unique, right? And so that's one of the things. But then also you mentioned, could multiple FarmOS instances have the same location or like point to the same place? And yes, because anybody could set up a FarmOS server and say, I'm farming in this field in Iowa. So yeah, there needs to be another layer in there of like, okay, so we're going to design this contract, and when we sign up, you know, this server gets this kind of like a unique identifier that is specifically them, so you can know that later on. Something like that has to exist.
Okay, here's another question, just to like throw something out there of a seed of something that may get us to where we're talking about a place that might involve a use case for smart contracts. Is there a situation in which you could have a farmer using FarmOS, managing their data on FarmOS, and then a third party using Oursci to input data about that same farm?
Like a verifier, like the
Like a
farmer is
verifier.
updated, like somebody's coming by and doing, or a researcher who's coming
Imagine
by.
Piscinus Ranch, they were using FarmOS all the time. Is there a situation in which they might be using FarmOS all the time and great, have all of their data stored in there, and then you might have a third party coming in using the Oursci app to evaluate or enter or verify some data, or just like do their own research and enter in a new data point, but that's talking about the same underlying, you know, soil organic carbon or like technique that was.
I mean, I think that's
sure
totally possible. I don't know that it's happening, you know, right now. Maybe I'm wondering if there's a situation with, what is her name? Jill, is it Jill? It's Jill Clapperton at, what is it? Risotera, maybe out in Washington. I think we're going to be doing some work with her, and we're going to be setting up, I don't know. I know they do some sort of, they're doing this like Farm Smart program, I think it's called, and they're going to be doing some sort of certification. So like potentially there could be some sort of application, but like I can see applications for this type of thing, or like the work that we're doing with Terragenesis, right? And I mean, they don't have FarmOS instances, right? But I could totally imagine situations like that.
An example that comes to mind, it doesn't have the Oursci integration in there, but we've talked about soil tests coming from a lab into FarmOS. You know, a farm could join that lab's aggregator and only give them access to like create soil or update soil logs in their FarmOS. And so in that sense, there's like this other third party adding data to FarmOS.
Now, in these sorts of situations, like with Jill Clapperton, and maybe the design hasn't gone far enough to know, but would they spin up their own, is the way that it's currently architected that they would, like Oursci would spin up a second FarmOS instance in order to store the data that they collect? So there would be a farmer managed and there would be an auditor managed FarmOS database? Or would they be using the same database and you would just know who entered what data? How does that work?
I guess I'd say I don't know if we're like far enough along, but maybe Paul, you might have better insight to this, so I don't want to like contradict you. I just don't know, like, would the auditor even be using FarmOS? Like, I guess in that situation, I would kind of expect that the farmer would have a FarmOS instance and then the auditor would just be using Oursci. And so when the farmer collects data, whether they're doing that directly through FarmOS or Oursci that then populates FarmOS, it would be, you know, longer term storage would happen in FarmOS, but the auditor, I don't know that I don't know why the auditor would have their own FarmOS instance, because they're not managing a farm. But
well, I guess
I don't
that's
know.
where I'm trying to understand. It's less about because I'm assuming Oursci is a service provider for that auditor, and they likely don't know their head from their tails, and so you're giving them a software solution to go and collect data and, you know, like run the audit. And so it's more like what makes sense, like where does that data live? Is the way that you're structuring it that Oursci has its own data backend, or that Oursci always uses FarmOS to collect and store farm data? That's what I guess maybe more what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, Oursci has its own, like, you know, we have our own databases and stuff like that. So it's not FarmOS is not the only way in which we store data. It's just when you're collecting data from a farmer, it's like a value add, right? Like for example, with the Real Food Campaign, we have all these farmers who are collecting all this data, And it's a big value add to them to say, hey, at the end of this project, you now have a pre-populated farm management software.
Right.
As opposed to just being like, you contributed in citizen science or whatever. And like, here's the spreadsheet or here's the report of what happened this year. It's like, they can actually have something that they can use moving forward.
Got it.
Something I wanted to add, in FarmOS, there's the concept of users as well, and different permissions and roles. So like right now this is pretty simple, but it's really easy to extend upon this. And right now there's a farm viewer permission. So a thought there is like you could give it to a maybe an auditor or like a like an organic certifier, and then they could have view only access to all your farm data. In a similar way, you could create auditor permissions that only people with that privilege, and you could manually add those user accounts to your FarmOS. They could have the ability to mark a record as, you know, verified, or et cetera. And so you can track those changes on a user level basis in FarmOS.
Cool. Good to know. Nice. I think that's all valuable context. To shift a little bit back more to the technical side of things, have either of you played around with or with any of the tutorials or the info around writing the Cosmwasm smart contracts at this point? Or is that, and if not, is working in Rust something that either of you are familiar with, or just to get an understanding of like what that looks like from your perspective?
I've looked at the tutorials and stuff, but I haven't done much like hands-on coding with it. In the last, or maybe challenge 3.1 or something, I was gonna modify one of them, but I just didn't have quite that much time at the time. But yeah.
Yeah, and I've also been, I read through like the intro of the Cosmwasm docs, and I've been working my way through. I haven't really gotten to the point where I'm like modifying the contract and running it yet, but I've been just kind of like studying the code a bit. Yeah, so hoping to devote some more time to it this week.
Is it feeling, it's feeling comfortable, it's feeling clean, or is it like, oh, like also, I don't know what programming languages you two, I guess Oursci, as I understand, is a lot of JavaScript. FarmOS, I'm not quite so sure. Is the Rust stuff like, I'm getting my way through, but it's kind of like I kind of figuring out what's going on, or is it like, no, I've worked in a language similar enough to this before, and it feels like very familiar?
So for me, I've done so. It's the syntax is a little bit different than some stuff, but I'm familiar enough with like it makes sense mostly. There's just like some new things that I have to learn about. But yeah, and so I think I just need to play with it some to get comfortable with it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. It's going to be like a learning step for sure, but
cool.
Yeah.
So just so you two are familiar, I did quite a bit of Rust. I worked on a personal project in Rust in the fall of last year, and was kind of digging my teeth into that language for like a solid 3 months. So like I spent quite a bit of time in that. And actually right before joining Regen, I did a couple of small bits of contract work with Ethan Frey from the Cosmwasm group, helping with some of the basic like template, like contract template stuff. So if you guys are running into issues there, either on the language side or on the contract side, like please consider me a very like easy resource to just like poke and ask questions to. I'm happy to go into any of the code details around that. Yeah, okay. I feel like it'd be nice if we can, within the last 15 minutes, get to a bit of like a clarified understanding of what might be a way to, yeah, like what our kind of path forward is for this. And I have some thoughts on this, but I'm curious to hear like if, having explored kind of where your two projects are, both individually and as like an integration point, is anything coming to mind right now?
I think the thing that's really coming to my mind is maybe on the more simple level, getting data from FarmOS straight to the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's coming to mind right now.
So the one thing that I'll share, have either of you looked at Simon's, he's done a few blog posts, Simon, I'm blanking on his last name. Warta, yes. For basically the like a JavaScript library for Cosmwasm, which at this point in time is read only. So it's able to read contract state. It is not able to, it's not a JavaScript library that has like write access to contracts, but obviously that, I think that is part of the goal.
I think I saw that mentioned in the chat.
Oh, sorry.
I think I saw that mentioned in the dev chat. So.
Yeah, and I think maybe Corey, you sent it to me at some point, and I skimmed through it, but didn't get too deep into it. But yeah, it's similar to, it's just a JavaScript API for interacting with the blockchain, right?
Yep, and at this point for reading blockchain state. Can I shoot that in the Zoom chat? Will people see?
Sure.
That's here. Cosmwasm client. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was wondering too, is like, how do you ensure that it's like who sent it and all that stuff, and like how do you do signing, and I guess at this point you can't use that library you could only use it for reading, but like
exactly
how do we get, like, kind of like what Paul was saying, like how do we get information from Oursci or FarmOS into Regen? Like how do we communicate that to there? Or similarly to the objective of like this project, like how do you identify the oracle, right?
Well, so I mean, essentially, like the oracle is like going to be, basically the oracle is going to have is going to be an account. It's going to be a whitelisted address, essentially.
Right.
And so we're maybe going to be operating from a situation where we just say that like, oh, this FarmOS instance is the oracle, or this Oursci user, like managed Oursci user is the oracle. Or if we were dealing with like Quick Carbon as a use case, from conversations that I've had with Greg Ostick, it seems like you guys are doing the statistics side of that, server side, right? There's like some R script that's running that's doing some calculations based on the field data. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then determining like, here's some estimation, or here's something with a confidence interval. And that process, would be the oracle in this model. And so you would basically, like, you would have to assign you would entrust that oracle as like a third party with you would say, here's like the public key that I know the oracle like can sign with, and that would be like managed in some secure way. And then that's just essentially a trusted entity that either manually or ideally like through some kind of automated process could be initiating transactions. And so the contract then basically is looking for a transaction from a specific user, right? It's looking for a transaction only from that address that it knows is the oracle address with some data statement or verified statement.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so onto the technical, Anil, remind me, I'm trying to think of how actually, what the transaction interface actually looks like for the Cosmwasm side of things. Because from the work that I had done, it was really just like, writing tests and stuff, but it was all in Rust code. And so I'm assuming that you can send like in Cosmwasm, can you send stuff over? Like, is it over JSON RPC to a node? Is it over gRPC? Like, have you worked with that?
Yes, we have this command line interface and then REST interface.
So there, and is that using the same REST interface that the Cosmos SDK,
yes.
that any Cosmos SDK app uses, right?
Yeah. And then for command line interface, it just requires some JSON string for any transaction.
And the REST interface is basically, you're going to be sending JSON?
Yes, JSON.
Okay. So yeah, this is stuff that I think, familiarizing ourselves with the docs, we could get a bit into the details of. But basically, there's going to be a node that's running that ideally, you know, it's like from the Oursci or FarmOS perspective, it's like you'll have a node running, and then you'll have your instance, and there's some path of communication between the two. Assuming that they're not like on the exact same machine, you'll probably be using the REST interface. And where things do get tricky, and I guess since this is testnet, we can be a little bit more loose with this stuff, is right. And Anil, maybe you can comment on this. The actual keys, for instance, do those get sent over with the JSON payload, or those are stored on the node and the node is considered the signing entity?
No, the JSON payload will be signed and sent to the RPC node, like blockchain.
Okay. So there would have to, sorry, go on.
Yeah, it won't send any private keys over the RPC. It just signs that JSON and then it sends that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But it's not like it signs it unsigned and then the node is the signing authority. Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense to you guys? So
what
on
we
the
can do is we can, if needed, we can try to set up basic, Oracle node, which takes the data from some database and signs it and send it to a smart contract. We can do that, and then just as a basic setup for Oracle node.
I do think it would be really nice, though, if we can, in the context of this challenge, have some sort of like test out this idea of like signing happening from one of these two applications.
If we could get Quick Carbon, like run a Quick Carbon, as an Oracle, and we could run FarmOS as an Oracle, that there's a signature that happens and it just triggers the, whatever it is, that would be awesome. Oh, and FarmOS too. I'm sort of like because Quick Carbon's using and Oursci, because Quick Carbon's using Oursci, I'm sort of like bundling
those two.
Yeah, and I don't know, like getting it into, I'm interested in that. And if you asked if I fully I was a little bit confused about like where the signing happens and how that happens. Like that's kind of the piece that I was really curious about, is like, so there's a REST interface, right, for the validator node, and somehow you ensure, like, I get that, the validator has some key that's, associated to saying like, this is the authority on this thing, but then like, how do you, get that to that node in a secure way and ensuring authenticity prior to that? So
as Anil mentioned, and this was also a little bit, I was still getting clarity on this as well, but it's basically the JSON payload that you signed over the REST API call has a signature with it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And can you point us to the docs for, like, is that in the Cosmos docs, or?
That should be in the, so the thing is, that's going to be in the generic Cosmos docs. I don't think, Anil, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's been a lot of Cosmwasm specific documentation on that, but I can corral basically the right constellation of resources for you guys, and kind of present that in a way that I think is most easily sort of usable and readable.
I have a question which might make it connect for me. So when I'm running the XRN CLI on my node, essentially you could replace that with a call over the REST API to my node.
Yes,
that correct?
because when you're running the CLI, like you're running the CLI
Yeah.
and then you're also running the daemon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. And
Anil,
I
that's
mean,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, in general, like they can connect to any validator that is like daemon or else full nodes. They just need this CLI to run the REST server or else basic
Oh
client.
wait, does the CLI run the REST server or the daemon run the REST server?
CLI runs the REST server. Like CLI initiates the REST server on some daemon.
Okay, so you would need to be running the CLI, but basically the CLI, whether you're aware of it or not, is also running the REST server.
Yes. So everything happens at the client, like all the signing and that stuff. It just sends this signed data to the daemon.
Wait, but sorry, but if you want to be communicating over REST, then you wouldn't need the CLI.
Yes.
Okay. So I was wrong when I was saying that, and I think Paul, you were right. So you can drop the CLI if you want to be doing REST-based communication.
Yes.
and you could send that request to any peer on the testnet.
Yes.
Any
Yes,
node.
correct. Yeah. So technically, technically, you actually would not need to be running a node to do any of it for us to be testing this out at all.
Yeah, for sure.
You could just be taking a payload and signing it to basically any peer that you trust to be up.
Any
having uptime.
any trusted peer, like you could have a full node up, or a validator that you trust could have a full node up that you trust as your peer.
And I think that's a pretty low barrier because like REST is so easy to implement from almost any system backend, any language.
Yeah. Cool. So I think maybe let's talk a little bit about timeline for a second so that we can make sure that if we're working on this, we're not biting off too much than we can chew within the given scope of timing that's expected here. Gregory, what do you see as like the arc for this bit of work? Because I have a few ideas of like practicals, kind of like next steps and who can take on what bits and pieces. But it'd be nice to kind of talk about the timing of things and make sure that this all falls within those expectations.
Yeah. Well, I'm just double checking. We extended the time, so it's the end of this phase is the 22nd of April.
Oh wow. Okay.
So there's quite a long period of time, and we could even do multiple.
Well, the 22nd of April.
Yeah.
That's 8 days.
That's 8 days. Yeah.
I don't see that as a very long period.
Oh, well, it's relatively longer than other periods in the testnet have been.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
And then I see it as it's like sort of like a little mini hackathon sprint, do some stuff, and then hopefully we could also do some of these, we could like sort of get together and we could be thinking about, extending this into some sort of work package and actually like develop, because I think there's several, like I was talking with Greg Ostick about the certification use case, there's the Ecuador use case, there's probably other things that we could just identify, and we could be working specifically on, the multiple facets of all of this into the future, and just use this as a reference for the rest of the community as to what happened. So, yeah.
Yeah, and to show that it's like possible, you can get data from Oursci and FarmOS to there.
To the blockchain,
so
do something.
So maybe for the next 8 days, could we like add on to the existing challenge to then like because one thing I read through that relatively quickly, but I didn't see where there would actually be somebody like updating those
Right.
the ecosystem state, I believe. So could we like extend that a bit to make it come from FarmOS and Oursci?
Yeah.
Yeah, Anil, was there anything explicitly in the challenge about the actual like transactions coming through the contract and it getting used?
Yes, so they are initiating some Oracle account themselves and sending the transactions. We can
say that again.
Everyone has to create Oracle account, and then that Oracle account sends out the state update I think we can just replace that with, farmers.
With what?
FarmOS
Okay.
Yeah.
or Oursci or
Cool. And then, yeah, I mean, cool. I want to say that maybe we should start with a, yeah, I don't know. Would it be stepping too much into this if I were to suggest that I just like clone the existing escrow contract and fudge it to be a little bit more similar to this, and we use that as a boilerplate for things? Or was anyone else from this group planning or wanting to take a crack at that first?
Yeah, that should be easy. Otherwise, we have this templating as well, right? So from Cosmwasm, we have templating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To use the Rust template, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. Yeah. What were you gonna say, Corey?
Because it seems like most of like obviously on the readability side, it's nice for you guys to be poking into the Rust side of things and like seeing how all that works. But most of the actual interactions will probably be spent in getting more familiar with what the REST interface actually looks like, and then doing some JavaScript work to actually like send those bytes in
Right.
like the JSON serialized format and stuff.
Yep.
But I don't know if either of you had the cycles and really wanted to like dig into the contract creation like part of it as well. Like I want to leave that opportunity there, but
I mean, I'm interested in doing that, and I definitely like that's something I'm excited about learning to do and getting good at contract design. But I also know that we have 8 days to do this, and I have plenty of other work. So realistically, if we actually want to do something, I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
all right. Well, we're 2 past the hour. I will send an email to this group with a few of the links. I'll compile basically like what I think is like the best way of navigating the Cosmos docs for us to get a clear handle on what that REST endpoint looks like, specific to Cosmwasm stuff. Anil, can you take updating the phase 5 challenge to include a bit more explicit notion about the updating of contract state coming from like one of these apps?
Before that, we need to have this Oracle nodes set up ready, right?
Oh, sorry. Say that again. I think you cut out for me.
Yeah. Before that, we need to have this setup ready, right, for Oracle nodes.
The setup ready for Oracle nodes?
Yeah.
I guess I'm not sure what you like. My understanding was that one of these apps would basically be the Oracle node. No, or do you have a different understanding? Yeah.
No, the same thing. Like they should be ready before we update that instruction doc, right?
Oh, because the other validator, they need to add that Oracle address to whatever they're creating. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or are the validators going to need to be hitting the Oracle as well independently, or does the Oracle just send a transaction just like any other user? Maybe I was misunderstanding that.
Like it is like any other user. It can be anything. But if we include, if we update these instructions, everyone will wait for this Oracle node to be up.
right.
There's
no need.
Are you saying that there's going to be a central Oracle node that we're all going to be listening to in the in the contract in phase 5 for everyone? There's just going to be one address that they should expect to receive the messages from. Is that what you're saying, Anil?
Want our farm here to be one of the oracles. So, and then if we update the instructions with that data, I think everyone will wait for that centralized Oracle.
I think if
That-
we, I think
If,
we should
because if there's a third-party contract developer, that's like if anyone else from the ecosystem is wanting to try out a Rust contract, it'd be nice. Like we should give them the address basically. Like it should be part of the instruction set. Like here's the Oracle address.
here's an Oracle address that you can use. That, yeah. Which,
So then, like, you can pass messages to that Oracle, and then the Oracle will pass them back to your smart contract. Is that the idea? Or
I think the idea is that this contract, right, or for this challenge, right, there may be anyone in the validator community, in the testnet community, who may be wanting to drum up a contract for this challenge, and write a contract for the challenge and submit it to the chain. But as part of the instructions, they need to use the same Oracle address. That
right.
And so part of the it's not just sufficient to write Oursci and FarmOS. It should say Oursci and FarmOS as identified by either this key or that key. Is that correct, Anil?
Yes.
So basically, if we're going to add in those Oracle details, it'd be great if you guys can first generate a key pair. Security should be of a decent testnet level concern. So treat that as you will, and yeah, send the public key, I guess, over to this group, and then Anil can update the docs accordingly. So that this way, if it's not, because I'm planning on throwing something together so that we can, if there's anyone else from the validator community who's wanting to take this opportunity to write a contract for this challenge, they should be able to use the same Oracle address.
I think it's a choice though. I think they could also generate their own Oracle address if they want.
That's my understanding.
That's my understanding as well.
Because like, for example, with FarmOS, I'm going to be running the FarmOS server and I'm going to know exactly how to like communicate with Corey's special thing he builds up, but I'm not going to know how to communicate, nor might I not even choose to talk to somebody else's validators, some other validators custom contract. Does that make sense? But they could set up FarmOS if they wanted and mimic that with their own Oracle.
Maybe I didn't read the docs well enough, but I'm a little confused. Anil, I thought that part of the challenge was actually people just assigning a validator address, and sort of like, in this case, the work that we're doing is to actually, it's going to be like pretty close to a legitimate Oracle. Sorry, an Oracle address. It's going to be pretty close to a legitimate Oracle. Many validators may not have proximity to this sort of project, although we could, if we hustled, which we didn't really do, but if we had hustled, we might have given people several different options. But because we didn't necessarily do that, I think the challenge is essentially like people can just sort of like make the Oracle up, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, but that is not there at the moment. So everyone can just sign a transaction using, like it will be manual transaction. If they want to, send some data to some contract, they'll execute some manual transaction. They won't be creating any Oracle nodes.
Right. No, I get it. They'll just be doing manual. And this would, so is the suggestion, Corey, that you're making that we add on extra points if people choose to use?
Yeah, maybe a little bonus, because it sounds like from Will and Paul's work, that's going to be the bulk of the stuff is going to be actually on that side of things.
Yes.
So we just add a bonus that says if you actually
implement an Oracle.
If you actually implement an Oracle, you get a point bonus.
Yes. And then if they are implementing Oracle node, I think they need to maintain a registry as well, like to list of contracts. They need to send the data.
So say that again. A registry for.
Yeah, a registry for the contracts, because they need to send the data to different like number of contracts, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
So maybe Anil, you and I could just have a quick think about what that extra incentive looks like.
Hmm.
I think it's probably not a blocker for Corey, for you working on a template, and for these guys just looking at the REST API and like figuring out how to wire that all together, and then we'll do our best to just like quickly add something in that, and then invite the community if other people want to participate to do something like that. That's great. I don't know how many people will have time beyond just doing a custom contract implementation to go the next step towards an Oracle. So
Yeah, if that REST API is little, I think that will be little trickier than client. If that is tough, you can just like directly execute the CLI commands instead, like something we are doing for faucet here. I'll share the link.
okay.
Cool. Thanks all. Should we, so today is Tuesday, it's the 14th, 8 days